West of the Rockies, checking in again at Contact in the Desert 2016. We're sitting here with the lovely Travis Walton. And, we've interviewed him before. We've had the amazing pleasure of doing so. He's an amazing guy, and we're here to ask him a few questions again. I'm not going to ask you to recount your whole story because you've done that too many times. You said before that you didn't feel like it was a malicious, there was no malicious intent behind what they were doing. Could you give us a brief glimpse of what you felt was happening at the time you disappeared?
When I regained consciousness, the first sensation was that of pain. I was disoriented. I really didn't know where I was, but I figured I'd been injured and taken to the hospital. But once I saw the face of these creatures, I was then immediately aware of the situation I was in. But because of the association with the pain and the feeling that I was injured, it really generated a tremendous amount of panic, especially the feeling that I could not get enough air. The suffocating feeling. I was breathing very hard, added to the feeling of panic. And, in the movie, there's a scene where the actor is held down on the table and there's a membrane over his face that he's trying to breathe through. He's trying to scream through it. And I think that does a better job than what actually happened. There was no membrane, but it communicates to people something that everybody can identify with, the feeling of panic that you get if you just feel like you're suffocating. And so, that colored all the other feelings of it being in a cramped, claustrophobic space, very dimly lit, the feeling that I was injured, the feeling that I couldn't move as effectively as I wanted to flee or, react or to defend myself. So all of that combined to make it feel, very threatening when, in retrospect, in hindsight, I don't think it was that bad intention. Obviously, the fact that I was returned in good condition to a place where I could get help, it points very strongly to the idea that they had no bad intention.
And I'm interested to know, taking into account, all of these things that have happened to you from that moment, you saw the strange lights, taking into account both negative and positive outcomes, would you go back and change what happened, or would you, are you happy with the way your life has panned out? Would you redo it?
Well, 2020 hindsight is, always, you think it's clearer than it was at the time. But looking back, I've always said that I'd rather it never happened. And in order to cope with anything, you have to look on the bright side, try to make the best of it, the old saying that if life hands you a lemon, make lemonade, and, you try to, go forward. So, I have to accept the bad. And so I may as well accept whatever, positive that can come of it. And for me, that is in some way trying to make some benefit to humanity come from it. To elevate the awareness and consciousness, the acceptance of the fact that we are not alone, and that there's no, that's not a threatening thing. It's not just us and everything else. I mean, there are many planets out there with all levels of development. People think about aliens as only being more advanced than us, but there's undoubtedly, you would have to assume, alien planets where they're even far more primitive than we are. They're still running around throwing rocks and spears. And, of course, we're not worried about those, are we? The ones that can travel here would, of course, have superior technology. But in my philosophy, and I've had, over 40 years to think about this, I don't think that they would be destructive. With that level of technological development, any sort of warlike tendency would just ensure their extinction. So the fact that they've even lived this long as a society, as a culture, to me, pretty much ensures that they're not malicious or malevolent. And, I'm sure many people hold opposing views. I do think, though, that in the field of people who have experience in contact or have thought about this very much, I think that the idea that they're not malevolent is probably the predominant view, rather than the idea that the evil aliens theory, which I think is sort of a mythology that's been inadvertently created by Hollywood because, in order to sell tickets, it's much easier to sell a story about invading monsters than, some really charming stories like E.T. or Starman, which probably are much more reflective of how it really is.
Well, you're obviously completely a go-to name in UFO culture, but not only that, also in general pop culture. And I remember listening to a little band called the Travis Waltons. How do you feel about, your name being out there and being essentially almost an icon in this culture?
Well, I think it's kind of fun, to have a band named the Travis Waltons. That's really cool. Aaron Paul did a cameo for their music video called Homewrecker, and I kind of like the song, actually. And there's another band that's just called Travis, and they've got a song called Side, and it's got all kinds of UFO stuff in it. It's a great video, too. Oh, and there's also a death metal group called Hypocrisy. I think they're Swedish or something like that. But they've got a song called Fire in the Sky. It's about my case. And there's a number of other, musical contributions along that line. And, it's interesting. I've always been cautious, though, never to, let it go to your head. I mean, that's a very foolish sort of thing to do. And I've, been exposed to enough celebrities that some of them do succumb to that, and it's very unbecoming.
Well, I'd just like to say you're probably the most grounded guy I've ever met, which is amazing, with all the people coming up to you saying, they're an inspiration, basically. And on that note, what advice would you give to people that believe they've had an experience that, was like yours?
Well, I do get asked that question quite a bit. People wonder, what should I do? I've had this experience, should I undergo hypnosis? Should I dig deeper into it, or should I turn away from it? And I always try to tell people, it's really an individual situation, an individual decision. You need to think about how you are going to deal with things if it turns out one way or the other, You need to think about what those close to you would think if you choose to tell them, and, whether to go public or not, or just keep it private. Some people would benefit from having the unease of some sort of a question resolved, and other people would just be better off turning away from it. And I really think it is sort of an individual choice.
Thank you so much, Travis, for your time and for your time in general that you've given to this community. Thanks.